I'm Nova.
I'm Alloy, and this is AgentStack Daily.
OpenAI's GPT-5.6 Sol can inspect a large software project, operate its tools, check the result in a browser, and push toward a finished deliverable instead of stopping with suggestions. ChatGPT now places conversation, knowledge work, and coding in one desktop workspace. Small companies are already using AI to recover missed sales, process invoices, design replacement parts, prepare estimates, and solve production problems.
Today, Sol takes on longer agent jobs. ChatGPT work produces documents and presentations, compressed multimodal models fit into phone-sized memory, and Pixel devices run private assistants offline. You'll hear how a 128GB AMD desktop expands local AI, how Gemini 3.5 Flash operates screens and builds software, and why New York and Australia are connecting AI growth to electricity, water, and community costs.
Claude's robotics trial also draws a useful line between language-based planning and split-second physical control. Meanwhile, a national cybersecurity program applies frontier AI to vulnerability coordination, and Google reconstructs a lost Pele goal without presenting generated images as recovered film. GPT-5.6 Sol is OpenAI's new model for complex coding, computer use, research, and security. Its interface can accept more than 1 million tokens of context and produce unusually long outputs, giving it room for sprawling software repositories, large document collections, images, and extended tool activity. Sol can search files and the web, execute code, use a hosted command line, apply software patches, generate images, operate a computer, and connect with outside services through MCP, a standard that lets models call tools and retrieve data.
The larger change comes from combining those abilities. Sol can write JavaScript that calls several tools, filters the results, and returns useful evidence. Rather than filling a conversation with every intermediate search result, it can process that material inside a short program with clear limits. Reasoning can persist across turns, while a beta multi-agent mode divides independent work among parallel agents. A developer might assign a repository-wide change, let one agent trace dependencies while another updates related code, and have Sol inspect the finished interface in a browser.
On the OS World 2.0 computer use benchmark, OpenAI reports that Sol improved from 47.5% with GPT 5.5 to 62.6%. It also reports gains in browsing and computer-aided design. Launch partner Deliverables says its runs required fewer steps and tool calls and got stuck less often. Kodo says pull request reviews used about 1/3 as many tokens and took roughly half as long. Those are company and partner claims, but they point toward less time spent supervising partial work.
Sol could support browser quality assurance, security analysis, large document research, and software changes that end with a reviewable artifact. OpenAI positions Terra as the balanced everyday option and Luna for faster, high-volume work, while Sol and its Pro mode cover more demanding jobs. Its value will depend on whether completion gains survive real permissions, changing interfaces, incomplete data, and human approvals. OpenAI redesigned the ChatGPT desktop app around 3 connected kinds of work. Chat remains the conversational surface. Work creates research and finished knowledge artifacts. Codex remains the dedicated software building environment. Existing Codex projects and settings carry over. People can keep Codex as their default view, and projects remain reachable from mobile. OpenAI has consolidated the workspace without pretending that a quick conversation, a financial presentation, and a software repair are identical activities.
Work changes the expected output. A person can assign a document, spreadsheet, presentation, or site rather than ask for advice and manually assemble the result elsewhere. A finance team could provide raw figures and receive a model, charts, a memo, and a presentation backed by sources. A product team could combine research, internal files, revisions, and a launch package. The final item remains something a person can inspect and edit, but the agent handles more of the gathering and production around it.
OpenAI's customer accounts show where that approach is landing. Zapier says a lead review system found 7 figures of missed sales pipeline. RingCentral says roughly 50 product managers use an automated launch check workflow. Virgin Atlantic reports that competitive research fell from weeks to hours. NVIDIA says it automated conference preparation that previously consumed about 40% of its pre-event time. These results come from OpenAI and its customers, so they are examples rather than guarantees.
The strongest uses begin with recognizable inputs and end with a concrete item, a research package, financial model, launch review, presentation, or repaired application. Keeping chat, work, and codex distinct also preserves an important human cue. People can see whether they are exploring an idea, commissioning an artifact, or changing software. The next measure of success will be reuse, whether teams can revise and repeat these deliverables as dependable company processes instead of receiving a polished but isolated result. Small business owners gave Congress unusually concrete accounts of AI in ordinary operations. A 151-year-old Chicago apothecary is building an accounts payable agent intended to return more than 20 employee hours each week. Its owner also said employment has grown by about 20% since the company adopted AI. Henry's House of Coffee used ChatGPT to help design and code a sensor-driven sprayer that solved a physical coffee bagging problem, moving AI from office text into production equipment.
In Detroit, contractors combined floor plans with spoken notes and complete estimates from their trucks before leaving a customer's driveway. An Oklahoma woodworker said unavailable parts for aging machinery can now be designed and printed within hours instead of taking weeks to acquire. AI also helped identify a home kitchen permit route for a Thai restaurant, reportedly cutting startup costs by more than 90%. Each use starts with a narrow obstacle that already costs the company time or money.
Sales results were equally specific. GT Coffee reported that its conversion rate rose from 1.5 to 2.3%, while the average order increased from $38 to $47. These numbers came from sworn witness testimony, not independent government audits, but they are useful because the businesses described a before and after outcome. The work covered invoices, online sales, permits, estimates, packaging, and replacement components rather than a vague promise of company-wide transformation.
Small firms often lack a dedicated technology department, yet they can move quickly when an owner knows where work is breaking down. Products that fit existing tools and physical routines can reach these companies without demanding a complete operating change. Durable products will save visible hours, raise measurable revenue, or produce a functioning object. Evidence across more businesses will show whether the reported gains persist, but these accounts already make AI's small business market tangible. Prism ML has compressed the existing Gemini 3.5 27B multimodal model into Bonsai 27B packages as small as roughly 3.9 GB. Multimodal means the model can work with images as well as text. The smallest versions store their learned values using only a few possible states, dramatically reducing memory use. Prism ML demonstrates the result on iPhone-class hardware, putting a model once associated with much larger computers within reach of consumer phones and laptops.
The release includes files for widely used local software and builds designed for Apple Silicon. Those formats connect the compression work with programs people already use to run models on their own devices. An application could examine an equipment photo, interpret a screenshot, or answer questions about a private document without uploading the material. A travel assistant could read a sign where service is unreliable. A workplace could keep sensitive records on its own laptop while combining visual and written information.
Fitting the model into memory does not settle the experience. Heavy compression can reduce answer quality, and a phone's heat, battery, and memory speed can limit sustained use. Prism ML's performance figures remain vendor-reported. A compact package may open successfully while still responding too slowly or missing details in a complicated image. The meaningful comparison is not only whether it runs, but whether it remains useful for everyday pictures, screenshots, and documents.
Even with those caveats, Bonsai expands the range of private applications that can fit in a pocket. Developers can create visual assistants that stays on the device and continues operating without dependable connectivity. If independent use confirms acceptable quality, inspection tools, accessibility features, private document assistance, and travel applications can gain capabilities once tied to cloud services without making every camera frame or record leave the user's hardware. Google introduced Gemma 4e2B with a tensor software kit in beta that runs the model natively on the dedicated machine learning chip in supported Pixel 10 family phones. Google is treating the phone as an offline application platform, not merely a screen that sends requests to a remote model. Images, recordings, and written instructions can remain on the device while an application interprets them.
Google demonstrated open-source applications for travel planning, home automation, transcription, plant recognition, shopping help, and equipment diagnosis. A field worker could point a pixel at a machine and receive assistance where the network is weak. A traveler could interpret a sign without roaming service. Someone recording a private meeting could produce text without uploading the audio. Local processing can shorten response time, preserve functionality away from a connection, and give people more control over sensitive inputs.
The company is also reducing the amount of specialist engineering needed to reach its mobile hardware. Developers can request beta access and adapt the example applications instead of beginning with low-level device integration. Google controls the model, the software path, and the pixel silicon, allowing those pieces to be designed together. That approach may make on-device AI more approachable than combining unrelated hardware, models, and local software.
The current support list is limited to the Pixel 10, 10 Pro, 10 Pro XL, and 10 Pro Fold. Google has shown native execution and practical demonstrations, but not sustained battery impact, heat, or broad public availability. Those details will determine whether offline assistants handle occasional actions or remain active throughout a working day. Still, camera assistants, private notes, household controls, and field diagnostics can now be designed around local operation first, with cloud services serving as optional support rather than a permanent requirement. Anthropic tested Claude on four-legged movement and robot manipulation work and found that direct, split-second motor control mostly failed. A language model cannot reliably replace the rapid software loops and safety systems that keep a physical machine balanced and responsive.
Results improved when Claude worked at a higher level. It could interpret a goal, write small tools, inspect simple visual feedback, and supervise a controller already trained to move the robot. In a warehouse, a worker might describe what needs relocating. Claude could plan the route and action sequence, while certified navigation and motion software controls each wheel or joint.
That division supports useful natural language robotics without asking a general model to handle physical timing or safety. Language models can plan, explain, and recover from ordinary problems. Proven controllers remain responsible for movement.
AMD's Ryzen AI Halo desktop has reached Micro Center with configurations offering up to 128GB of unified memory. Unified memory gives the processor an integrated graphics access to one large pool, avoiding the small dedicated memory ceiling that keeps many consumer graphics cards from loading larger AI models. A developer can now buy this capacity as a retail desktop instead of building a specialist system or immediately renting remote graphics servers.
AMD says the computer can support models with as many as 200 billion parameters, the learned values that shape a model's behavior. That statement describes capacity, not responsiveness. Compression, prompt length, software support, and memory speed still determine how quickly a model answers. A giant model may fit yet remain inconvenient for interactive use. Even so, 128GB moves experimentation with larger local systems into a more accessible desktop category.
The machine could host a private assistant, a service that answers questions from company documents, a coding agent, or a tool that combines text with images and audio. A small team can keep sensitive files on its own hardware and decide whether local quality is sufficient before paying for cloud deployment. Schools, clinics, studios, and engineering groups with strict data boundaries gain another option between a lightweight laptop and an expensive server.
This complements the phone-sized work from Bonsai and Google. Phones cover portable tasks such as transcription, visual help, and field diagnosis. Halo provides a desk-side environment for larger models and longer jobs. Retail availability also broadens who can explore local AI, Independent developers and small organizations can purchase one supported machine rather than assemble several components. The hardware has arrived, local software and everyday speed will decide whether it becomes a practical workstation or merely an impressive demonstration of how much can fit in memory. GitHub has expanded Bring Your Own Key support for Copilot in JetBrains editors. Developers can keep the familiar Copilot interface while routing AI requests to a compatible custom service, including a locally served model or a private company system. The editor experience and the model doing the work no longer have to come from the same provider.
That separation gives organizations a shorter path from an internal model to everyday software work. A team can expose Bonsai, another open model, or its own adapted model through the supported format and make it available inside IntelliJ-based tools. Developers do not need to leave their normal editor, and the organization does not need to build a complete editor extension merely to offer a different AI service.
Data control is a major reason to use the feature. A company may want source code and prompts processed on its own computers or through an approved provider. A private service creates that option, although it does not automatically make the complete workflow private. Actual boundaries still depend on where the service runs, what it records, how traffic is routed, and how Copilot is configured.
The change also makes model comparisons easier to understand because the developer's interface can stay constant. Coding quality and response time become the deciding factors rather than differences between editor plugins. If local models prove good enough for routine explanations, completions, and code changes, teams can gain more choice over cost and data handling. If they lag on complex repairs, private systems may still earn a place in regulated work where control matters more than frontier performance. New York has temporarily paused certain environmental permits for new hyperscale data centers while the state measures their effects on electricity, water, air quality, utility bills, and nearby communities. Governor Kathy Hochul announced the action through an executive order on July 14. It can last for as long as 1 year and applies to qualifying projects that require regulators to make a discretionary environmental decision.
Existing facilities are not being closed, and every new data center is not automatically blocked. Projects outside the affected permit path may continue. The order delays a defined class of very large developments, giving the state time to ask who supplies their power, how much water they consume, and whether households might absorb part of the infrastructure cost through higher rates.
Those questions affect services people use every day. A company can secure chips and financing yet still wait for electricity, cooling, grid upgrades, and public approval. If a planned facility opens late, cloud capacity may appear in another region or cost more than expected. Communities face a real trade-off. Data centers can bring construction work and tax revenue, but they may also compete for limited power and water while requiring expensive transmission projects.
New York study will influence what follows the pause. Future permits could require clearer energy plans, community protections, or direct contributions toward infrastructure. For towns receiving proposals, the decision determines who benefits and who pays. For AI companies and their customers, it can shape construction schedules, regional capacity, and prices. The industry's expansion is now visible in substations, cooling systems, land use, and household bills, not only in chips and model announcements. The White House announced Gold Eagle, a government industry clearinghouse intended to coordinate how software vulnerabilities are received, verified, prioritized, and sent toward repair. When a new flaw appears, different groups can scan the same systems while urgent findings compete for attention. Gold Eagle aims to use frontier AI to reduce duplicated scanning and deliver prioritized threat and repair information to government, finance, and critical infrastructure operators.
The announced work includes taking in and prioritizing identified vulnerabilities, coordinating verification scans, and turning the results into information defenders can act on. The announcement does not identify a model or vendor, and it does not put autonomous patching in charge of national systems. Human organizations remain responsible for confirming findings and carrying out repairs.
Faster national coordination will expose slow handoffs inside participating organizations. A bank, hospital, or utility needs to know which software it operates, who owns each patch decision, and which systems cannot be interrupted casually. Better prioritization matters only when the information reaches the right people. Products that maintain software inventories, connect duplicate reports, explain severity evidence, and route work to an accountable owner can support that chain.
Gold Eagle moves AI security work beyond an isolated analyst assistant. It attempts to organize information across institutions with different tools, incentives, and responsibilities. Important details still include how participants share sensitive reports, how decisions can be challenged, and how the clearinghouse separates strong evidence from confident model output. With sound oversight, AI could reduce duplicated effort while leaving consequential repair and disclosure decisions with people. Anthropic has divided access to its strongest underlying model across Fable 5 and Mythos 5, while positioning Sonnet 5 as the lower-cost general option. Fable carries broad safeguards for mainstream use. Mythos is restricted to vetted cybersecurity and science partners. Sonnet is intended for common browser, terminal, debugging, and business workflows with what Anthropic describes as agent performance close to its more expensive offering.
Customers now choose more than capability and price. They must also consider the work's sensitivity, whether they qualify for access, and how protective systems may affect completion. A routine software assistant may fit Sonnet. A demanding general workflow may use Fable. Sensitive scientific or cybersecurity activity could require Mythos and additional eligibility. Similar underlying intelligence can therefore arrive with different rules and commercial terms.
Anthropic says Stripe used Fable on a migration involving a 50 million-line Ruby codebase and completed in one day what otherwise would have taken a team more than 2 months. That is a company-published customer account, not an independent measurement, but it shows the scale of task Anthropic wants to address: long-running changes across enormous software estates, not merely short code suggestions.
Government requirements have already affected availability. The U.S. government applied export controls in June, and Anthropic suspended access because it could not verify nationality in real time. Service returned after those controls were lifted. Separately, Anthropic says it strengthened its safety classifiers and expanded government testing after the incident. Organizations will increasingly judge a model by dependable access as well as intelligence. Customers need clear expectations about eligibility, interruptions, and the route for resolving mistakes when legitimate work is blocked. Google has released Gemini 3.5 Flash with native computer use across browser, mobile, and desktop environments. The model can inspect a screen, use visible controls, alter software, and return a finished result. Google demonstrated it generating several payment interface designs, building a game from a research paper, organizing large file collections with parallel agents, and automating continuous software testing.
Screen operation reaches applications that lack a direct connection for agents. A person may currently copy information between a website, desktop program, and internal form because those systems were never designed to cooperate. Gemini can potentially observe each interface and carry the work across them. Its ability to create or change software also means the job can end with a working artifact rather than a report describing what someone else should build.
Google's published comparisons do not identify one model as best at everything. Gemini 3.5 Flash performed better than GPT-5.6 in one evaluation centered on connected tools but fell behind it on terminal work. Different jobs favor different abilities. A fast screen operator may suit office software and browser processes, while another model may perform better in a command-line engineering environment. Gemini 3.5 Pro is described as coming soon. Flash is the available product.
Screen access also opens a direct route to mistakes and manipulation. An agent can click the wrong control, misread a changed layout, or follow hostile instructions placed inside a web page. Visible approval for consequential actions and reversible changes can keep failures manageable. Immediate uses include arranging files, checking a website, preparing interface variants, and completing a known software change. Long, messy processes will reveal whether the demonstrations translate into dependable daily work. Australia has created an Office of AI and proposed national standards tying large data center expansion to electricity, grid, water, and and creator obligations. Under the proposal, major operators would fund new power supply, pay their connection costs, lower demand when requested, and reduce water use. The government also says Australian creators should retain control over whether their work is used to train AI systems.
These standards are proposals, not current law. National Cabinet consideration is planned for August, with legislation targeted for early 2027. Even before the final rules are known, the government is making its preferred bargain clear. Companies that consume enormous physical resources should not automatically pass every expansion cost to the public, and creative work should not become training material without meaningful creator control.
The energy requirements could change where and how data centers operate. A site with available land and chips may still be unattractive if it lacks generation or an affordable grid connection. The ability to reduce consumption during periods of stress could become part of facility design. Water efficiency will matter, especially where cooling competes with homes, agriculture, or ecosystems. Training data records and licensing may also become more important product features if creators gain enforceable choices.
Australia and New York are using different tools, but both are responding to AI's physical footprint. New York has paused a permit route while studying impacts. Australia is outlining costs and duties that operators may carry. The August discussion should clarify which facilities qualify, how creator control would work, and how power and water commitments would be measured. These decisions can influence cloud prices, construction schedules, local employment, and the terms under which cultural material enters model training. Google and Google DeepMind have recreated a celebrated Pele goal from 1959 that had no known surviving film. The resulting video is a reconstruction, not discovered archival footage. The team combined historical documents, stadium plans, eyewitness memories, expert input, practical filmmaking, and generative systems including Veo, Gemini Omni, and Nano Banana Pro.
The project went far beyond asking a video model to invent a goal. Researchers had to determine what records supported, how the stadium was arranged, where a camera might plausibly have stood, and how witnesses remembered the sequence. Filmmakers then joined those pieces into a continuous visual account. AI supplied part of the image making, while human judgment reconciled incomplete and sometimes uncertain evidence.
Museums, archives, educators, and documentary teams can use a similar approach when an event was never filmed or its recording disappeared. A reconstruction can help an audience understand spatial relationships and movement that text alone struggles to convey. It becomes more trustworthy when viewers can distinguish details drawn from documents, details recalled by witnesses, and moments inferred by the production team.
Convincing generated video can easily escape its original context and be mistaken for authentic film. Clear labeling therefore matters as much as visual quality. Future historical reconstructions could preserve provenance by connecting important scenes to their supporting evidence and marking uncertainty where accounts differ. Used carefully, generative video can make missing history visible without claiming that a camera captured it. Used carelessly, the same technology can replace an incomplete record with images that feel more certain than the evidence allows. Codebase Memory MCP has 31,812 GitHub stars and gained attention after its 0.9 release and a July 14 update. It indexes code in 158 languages as a persistent map of symbols and relationships, then answers code queries in under a millisecond according to its maintainers. It ships as a dependency-free static program. OpenClaw, Codex, or the terminal-based AI coding agent Claude Code can retrieve the relationships between functions and modules instead of repeatedly loading whole files, leaving more context available for understanding and changing the code.
FastMCP has 26,223 stars, with version 3.4 released July 9 and repository activity continuing July 14. It is a Python toolkit for turning existing functions and data sources into agent tools with little extra scaffolding. In ordinary terms, it lets an agent call a database, internal service, or automation through named actions with defined inputs and outputs. Teams can connect those tools to OpenClaw, Codex, or Claude Code without asking the model to improvise a new connection every time.
Microsoft's MCP for Beginners has 16,758 stars and was updated July 13. It is a practical curriculum rather than a software release, with examples in .NET, Java, TypeScript, JavaScript, Rust, and Python. The material explains how tools, resources, and prompts can be exposed to agents in modular and secure ways. Its integration value comes from shared patterns. Teams working in several languages can standardize how internal services appear to agents instead of allowing every group to invent an incompatible interface.
Model Progress today landed in agent completion, on-device operation, compression, and access tiers rather than a new general-purpose name. Competition is shifting toward where intelligence runs, which tools it can operate, how much memory it needs, and whether organizations can depend on access.
MOS Transcribe Diarize is a newly trending open audio model for transcription with speaker diarization, meaning it turns a recording into text while separating the people who spoke. Its published model information lists audio and text input. That makes it relevant to private meetings, interviews, oral histories, support calls, and podcast production. Running locally can keep raw voices and sensitive conversations off a cloud service. Its usefulness depends on both abilities working together. Accurate words are not enough if they are repeatedly assigned to the wrong person, while good speaker labels cannot rescue a poor transcript.
Hugging Face Transformers 5.14 added support for Thinking Machine's open-weight Inkling model. Inkling accepts text, images, and audio, with 975 billion total parameters but only 41 billion active for a given input. Support in the widely used Transformers library makes the model easier to use in fine-tuning, search, coding, and agent projects.
Unity MCP has more than 12,500 stars and shipped version 10.1. It lets assistants manage assets, control scenes, edit scripts, and automate work inside the Unity editor. Game developers can give an assistant named tools for ordinary editor actions without leaving the environment where they build and test their games.
Semble has more than 5,600 stars and released version 0.5. It returns focused code matches for agents and claims roughly 98% lower token use than repeatedly searching and reading whole files. That can leave more context available for understanding the relevant functions and making a coherent software change.
Sol and ChatGPT work push AI toward finished software, research packages, documents, and presentations. Small business gains are appearing in invoices, estimates, sales, permits, machinery, and production lines. Bonsai, Pixel AI, and AMD's 128GB desktop expand private local computing from pockets to desks. JetBrains connects those models with an established editor, while Gemini Flash connects agents with ordinary screens.
Claude's robotics result keeps language models in planning and supervision while proven controllers handle movement. Gold Eagle applies AI to national vulnerability coordination. New York and Australia show that electricity, water, permits, creator rights, and community costs now shape AI expansion alongside chips and models. Google's Pele reconstruction shows why generated history needs visible evidence and clear labeling.
For source details and further reading, look at the show notes at tobyonfitnesstech.com.
Thanks for listening to AgentStack Daily. We'll be back soon.